Things just took a major turn for the Toronto Blue Jays as a massive new report has just dropped from a very notable MLB insider revealing some new information surrounding Ross Atkins and the Jays' free agency plans that are much different than we initially thought. We're going to break that down and discuss what it means going forward as it reveals some critical information surrounding Bichette and their plans surrounding a starting pitcher. You're going to want to stay tuned for this on this episode, as well as a brand new report surrounding one thing in particular that has fans fired up. A ton to go over on this episode, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to want to stay tuned till the end of the video. But before we're going to do it all, if you're part of the percentage, you aren't subscribed to the channel, you guys are an absolute beast of the support. And it truly means the world to me. Shout out to everyone who was on, or rather at the live stream yesterday. You guys are the best, folks. Ton of new reports have dropped. And if you've been watching the channel now for the past few weeks or however long you've been watching, a lot of new reports have been dropping. Now, we know the Jays are in on Kyle Tucker. We know, of course, the Bichette situation. Things have taken a pretty interesting turn here. And let's dive into this new report that dropped last night. And of course, they're in the middle of the Vegas meetings, and there's a lot of new information coming out. But let's start with this by Shi Davidi, the most notable MLB insider. He goes, the Bo situation is tricky, but because they have depth there, they can afford to play that out. Once that starting pitching is gone, it's gone. And take a minute and analyze what he's saying here. I'll do it obviously with you guys. He's basically alluding, and I watched the clip, that the Jays are not going to go out of their way immediately to sign Bichette. And of course, they're going to put their offer and they're going to be right at the forefront of the Bichette sweepstakes. And I do think they're going to get Bichette, extended, or rather, I guess, signed. But they are looking at the starting pitcher. Now, assuming you resign Bichette here, right? That's probably going to take a little bit of time because there's a ton of players out there who are available, but also there's a ton of teams that want Bichette. Now, with starting pitching, that goes fast. It's usually the first to go in the market, which means the Jays will have to act quick because you cannot strike out on a starting pitcher here. And Shi Davidi's hinting at the fact that they could wait on Bichette, and if they somehow, lose out on him because they got an elite starting pitcher, they'll be able to live with that. And Ben Nicholson-Smith earlier on last night came out and said, my understanding from talking to a lot of people here is that starting pitching is their number one priority, and they will add a starting pitcher this winter. That is going to happen, but it's not something where they're going desperately at one individual person. And we'll dive into a report here surrounding who that starting pitcher could be. But you see these two reports together, and it really goes to show that, hey, they might not be as worried as we are, or maybe as we initially thought, about Bichette's future here. They have a ton of infield depth. Are they as good as Bichette? No. Should they bring Bichette back? Absolutely, and I do believe they will. But their number one focus right now is starting pitching. And don't be surprised if the Jays, and I said this in the stream yesterday, don't be surprised if the Jays go out and get one of the higher echelon, top tier free agent starting pitchers before they finalize their extension with Bichette. Because we know reports have come out that Bo is going to be perusing the market, getting the best number, talking to multiple teams. And the starting pitchers, they go immediately, right? They're usually the first to go because of how good. Now, there is exceptions. Sometimes they aren't, but they're usually pretty quick, right? Because of how good and important they are. And there's not usually a lot of them. Plus, you pair that with, Ben Nicholson-Smith saying that their number one priority isn't Bichette, it's starting pitching. It makes things extremely, extremely interesting. And you can see this here from Joshua. Starting pitching is definitely a priority, but offense should be right there with it. You can't count on Springer rather repeating his career best season at age 36, and that was a huge driver of the offense. And I've agreed with Joshua here because can Springer put up an 800 OPS? I think so, right? 750 to 800 we'd be fine with, I think. The 900 to 1,000, that might be a bit out of reach. Who knows, though? He's a superhero. He's Superman, especially with what he did last year. But you have to expect for some regression, right? Whether that be from guys like Nathan Lucas, perhaps, or maybe Ernie Clement, though he still had a 99 WRC plus on the season, which is slightly below average. But I think Barger's going to be better next year, actually, than this previous year, based on everything we're seeing. But you have to go for offense and pitching. And it's a little bit of an interesting turn here that two reporters say they're going all in on starting pitching. Now, pair that with Bob Nightingale dropping last night that Ranger Suarez is the Jays' preferred starter. Suarez is expected to be one of the highest paid starters in the open market, with teams like the Toronto Blue Jays salivating for a chance to sign him. He's, of course, a lefty who is really, really good, played for the Phillies, and would not only give the Jays a southpaw, but would also give them one of the better starters in the MLB, period. And if they're going out and they want to prioritize Ranger Suarez over Bichette, do I like it? I don't know, right? Like, it's interesting. I think I'd rather keep Bo. But at this point, there is a hole in their starting rotation. And at the same time, Davidi also said that the Jays will make Bo a priority on the position player side, but there is some part of me that feels some way or some form they will find a way back to each other. And we'll cover that in a future video. But It's interesting because there is a lot of starting pitchers available, whether that be Ranger Suarez, whether that be Tetsuya Imai, a lot of guys. And Ross Atkins spoke out on Imai recently and said a good player with a really interesting arsenal that had an incredible year. So we've done the background work. We've had some more work to do on that front, but I'm glad that he's going to be an option for the industry. Now, I don't think they're going to go out and get Tetsuya Imai, but I think there's a much better chance to go out and get a guy like Ranger Suarez because their plans now have almost shifted from Bichette being the priority with Kyle Tucker to get the starting pitcher, get that out of the way, and build around it. And it's interesting. And I don't think this means that they're not going to get Bichette, right? I just think the market's going to move quicker on the the pitcher side rather than the position player side, and they're going to adjust accordingly. And I mean, you can see here as well, like this is a new report that dropped last night as well. I mean, there's so many reports here. The Jays focus on pitching. A significant starter appears as an obvious play. The Jays, a league source said, are interested in players at the top of the market. Dylan Cease, Ranger Suarez, Framber, Valdez, and Tetsuya Imai. So, I mean, Dylan Cease is another interesting one. We'll have a full video covering that shortly here. Stay tuned. But Ranger Suarez just seems like the obvious example. Jeff Passan dropped a bombshell report saying that the Jays are probably that's their number one target, along with Kyle Tucker as well. And of course, now at this point, you look at Ranger Suarez. He's such a good player with a 3.20 ERA last year. The year before, 3.46 ERA, both with over 150 pitches or innings pitched, sorry. Really good advanced analytics. He doesn't throw fast, but he'll age pretty well, especially at age 30. He's a lefty. He can really play into the Jays' elite defense because he doesn't necessarily strike out a ton of people, doesn't get a ton of whiffs, but he plays to contact and limiting hard hit percentage, hard hit balls, and barrels. You have Dalton Varsho for a guy who I believe gets up a fair amount of fastballs or fly balls. Sorry, of course his ground ball percentage is high too, 76% on ground balls. So maybe he can benefit from both, and I'm sure he can. Ideal target. And it's interesting that they're going this route rather than the initial route, which most people thought of, which was Bichette one, figure out the rest later, or maybe even for some, Kyle Tucker one and figure out the rest later. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on this. It's a little bit interesting, and Ranger Suarez is an absolute, he's a beast. He's insane. Whatever word you want to use for him, he would be a dream offseason acquisition. Speaking of dream acquisitions, last year you could argue one of them was Tyler Heineman, and Ross Atkins spoke out and revealed Tyler Heineman could be in the mix again next year. He said, "We always have to think about it if there's a way to get better, but he is well positioned to be a part of our future. He is arbitration eligible." So for those out there who are excited about Tyler Heineman, they'll probably bring him back. There's no real better option at this point. How much he's going to get in arbitration is going to be very interesting because he had a career year, but he's not going to do that again, right? And this is some of the regression you have to think about. It's not just Tyler Heineman, other players on the Jays. You always have to account for regression in case they regress. So that way you're not left with the team like you were in 2024, like the Jays were rather, and they were, feeling out there a 74-win team. So it's going to be interesting, super exciting. And at the end of the day, folks, their plans took a little bit of a shift, and I'm excited to see what they do next.